Good. Okay, so today's little session is all designed on learning the art of scissor over comb. Now when I say art, it is an art. It is an art form and it is something that's going to take you some time to master. So it's a skill that doesn't just come naturally and you will not be an expert at it within the first couple of weeks, but you're looking at really mastering this skill to become an extremely professional barber. There's some real fundamental basics we need to start with. If we get the basics right, then the rest of that skill will develop quite naturally. If we don't understand the basics, it's going to take you much longer to master that art of scissor over combing. Scissor over combing will be used so much working in a barber shop, so it is crucial that your skills are up to speed. You can use it for many different aspects, and we're going to cover two main aspects: a stationary scissor over comb and a motion scissor over comb, and the key parts of that to ensure that you are covering all of those skills really well. So remember, with the scissor over comb technique, the first things you're going to need to work at is the combs that you're going to be using, and obviously the different types of scissors. Sounds stupid, but if you do not have the right size scissors for your fingers, the whole skill is a much more difficult task. So you're going to need to make sure that your fingers fit the scissors correctly and the size of your scissors are going to be suitable for you. It can be done with thinning scissors, and I suggest to start with, certainly with a motion scissor over comb, to build your confidence and your skills. Practice with some scissor over comb using your thinning scissors. That way you will not have so many lines if your technique is not really smooth and accurate. Back to your combs that you can use. Wide tooth combs are going to be much more of a preference or a barber's choice when you're using the scissor over comb. Certainly with a very much more of a motion, because you need to get the comb through the hair as you're working. So you can have wide tooth combs, longer combs, which is going to be much more preferable, and then different coloured combs to ensure that you can identify the haircut much better. For instance, if you're working on a gentleman which has very darker hair, you're going to need to adapt your comb. So in this case, the hair is really dark. The comb being red will identify the hair much better as you're running up your comb. Whereas a black comb, you're not going to see anywhere near the amount of detail. That's good. Holding your comb at the correct length at a 90-degree angle and just removing the length. You can then adapt your comb and the angle you hold your comb to then start to graduate the haircut in, or even tighter to taper it in. That is a stationary scissor over comb motion. That particular area gives you much more control and balance. The further your fingers move down the comb, the less control you have over your comb. So anywhere in this direction is going to be good. You may wish to hold your comb with your fingers in this position. You may in that position, and some barbers will hold it in that position. And it's your personal choice and preference to how you hold your comb. I personally start here, but depending on where you're cutting, you may need to adapt it to change your angle of your hand. Certainly if you're tapering, it's harder to come in at the bottom of the haircut with a taper or a graduation result if you're holding your comb this angle, because you're having to bend your wrist much more. Whereas if you change your angle of your fingers and your hand, it will complement that with much more ease. Using this part of your scissors closed, pick up the element of hair you wish to cut, work out the desired length, hold your comb stationary and still, and remove the excess length accordingly, creating a guideline of which then you can follow down through the rest of the haircut. The most important part of this method is to lock your comb into position so it's not wobbling and it's not deviating off the curve of the head, and ensure that you collect the hair required and the guideline required to create a very nice, even balanced haircut. You can cross-check by going back through and just making sure you do not miss any bits. This way you're creating a guide that you can then follow around the haircut. It's a form of layering, graduating and tapering just by using that standard method and motion. Trying to scissor over comb when you're at this far away is going to be impossible. Likewise, if you're this far away, you must find your comfort zone. Drop your shoulders, relax, work out the best position for you to stand. The thumb doing the work. It is the blade being fixed in one position. A really good way of practicing the skill is placing your scissors on a flat surface and practicing moving your thumb without moving the bottom blade. The bottom blade should stay stationary. That movement comes from your thumb, opening it quite wide to ensure you can collect amount of hair to cut. So practice that technique. Most people will go for a technique whereby their fingers and thumbs move together. It can still be done. Do not have your comb moving faster than your scissors, or likewise your scissors faster than your comb. Make sure that when you're operating your scissors, that each stroke is wider than the comb to ensure that you're picking up on enough hair. You're never going to be cutting hair if you're doing this technique, because simply you're not collecting enough hair to cut. Your blades need to be quite wide. So therefore you're going to use your comb and your scissors together in a motion that travels up together. When you're scissor over combing, your scissors do not travel along the comb. As your comb is coming up, you do not want to be going in that direction. You need to be locking it into position and going in together. If you are moving along like that, you're just cutting different lengths, so you will not get this fluid kind of transition throughout the haircut. Comb is known as the spine area. You need to aim to get your blade straight, parallel, fixed at the point of the bottom of the spine. Nice and wide, and the movement comes together as you're collecting and cutting the hair. Because when you go for your skills test or a job interview, a professional barber wants to see you really master this motion of scissor over comb. It will look delicious if you get it right. It will look very professional, and it will get you haircuts that will be just fantastic. You need to think about how fast your comb is travelling up the head in relation to the strokes of your scissors. Because for instance, if your comb is moving really quick and your scissor motion is 1, 2, 3, 4, you're just cutting elements rather than the whole thing. Liken scissor over comb to a clipper motion. Remember, when you're using a clipper motion, you're gathering and cutting all the hair evenly at the desired length of your clipper blade attachment. Scissor over comb is no different to that. So slow to start with. Collect. You must come in and collect the hair. It's almost a motion of going in and collecting. So you're going to go fixed position, slow to start with, and collect. Those three elements are going to get you to where you want to be. So, in, collect, speed, and fixed position. Some barbers will come in and start to cut. Not a problem. In and start to cut. Some barbers will come across and start to cut. It's about finding what works better for you. So you may come in with your scissors and locate where you want to cut, and then in and continue to cut accordingly. It may be that you come in from the side, locate and cut accordingly. But once you've made contact with the cutting process, your scissors stay absolutely flat to the comb. Do not come across and do not wobble. From the side, locking my scissors into position, my comb and my scissors now become one tool, and I start to then scissor over combing. Imagine if I went too fast, so the comb's going to go really fast, my scissors already lost it, they're not even making contact. In, collect and work it together, and start to think about reducing the length accordingly. A lot of young barbers will make this mistake. They will come in with their scissors and bounce off the comb as they're cutting. So therefore, they're knocking the comb off its position, it's not locked in, so it's therefore going to be uneven, and you're going to end up with chunks and lines where you're kind of bouncing in. So you really don't want to do that. You can see already the mistakes that's being made. The only other thing really important you need to remember is that actually most of the time you're going to curve out to connect. So the comb will leave the head and come out in a curved motion to blend and connect between the shorter and the longer lengths. Don't try to scissor over comb anything with length like that, or it's just going to be a nightmare. The comb's already stuck. Here it travels through beautifully, not a problem. Here it's still short enough for the comb to manage. Here it's going to be a nightmare and you're just stitching yourself up, you're never going to really get through it. So you can reduce the length first by a very much more stationary scissor over comb method, and as you start working down and it gets shorter, you'll be able to then start to transfer that skill into a motion comfortably.